This situation keeps getting crazier as the New York Rangers are once again in a playoff spot. They're getting some surprise performances from a few players, and what happens over the next few games will determine the future of this roster. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers, it's free. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Now, a much better game on the second half of a back-to-back against the San Jose Sharks. Not a great Sharks team. You would expect to beat this team, but the season has been full of shoulds for the New York Rangers, so it was nice to see them pick up a win. And something scary that did happen in last night's game, we'll get into some stats and all of that in a second, was JT Miller leaving and being checked on by a trainer. It looked like he was actually going to leave the game. He did not, and he had a great game. And this was scary for one of many reasons. First of all, he's been one of your best players since he came over in the trade. And obviously, if you lose this player, it's not looking very good. Yesterday's win puts you back in a playoff spot. But at the time I'm recording this, the Montreal Canadiens are beating the Florida Panthers. So we'll see what happens with that game. It could be a tie by the end of the day again, and the Montreal Canadiens have a game in hand, and they also play the Florida Panthers again on Tuesday night. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on, as the Rangers don't play until Wednesday night against the Minnesota Wild. So that was a little scary, and the reason I say that is because, again, he's been one of their best players. JT Miller has a league high tying 9 multi-point games since February 1st. Again, he was traded just before February 1st to the New York Rangers. His first game with the New York Rangers was February 1st against the Boston Bruins, where he had 2 goals, and they lost that game against the Boston Bruins. A league high tying 9 multi-point games. He has 9 multi-point games since coming over 2 months ago. Very impressive, and he was fine yesterday, and obviously that's some good news for the Rangers and Rangers fans, because if he's missing time, that's going to be tough. Because if you look at things like the impact score chart from last night's game against the San Jose Sharks, yes, he's the middle of the pack, but he has a lot of positive impact, very minimal negative impact. And even if he does, it's fine, because pros and cons, right? You have to take the high risk with the high reward with certain players like that. But he's been phenomenal since he's come over in a trade. And a couple of other players that have been phenomenal and on this list, maybe not so much yesterday, is Johnny Brodzinski, and we're going to get to Brennan Othman in a second, but Johnny Brodzinski has been fantastic, and as Adam points out here, he now has 10 goals, scored again last night, nice goal off the rush, great shot, 10 goals in 43 games so far this season. He was scratched for a lot of this season, and if you look at an 82 game, sample size, pace, whatever you want to call it, he would be a 19 to 20 goal scorer on the season. That is pretty good for a guy who is penciled in and in and out of the lineup in your fourth line. That's pretty good. And again, he's averaging fewer than 12 minutes a game. He's put in some really good work in the second half of the season. Doesn't even make $800,000 against the cap. So he's been having a great season, Johnny Brodzinski has. And not just him. Another guy who was called up recently, and I think he's earned it. He went through a pretty brutal injury this season. He was playing with Hartford. He didn't make the opening night lineup because of Adam Edstrom, making it over him. And maybe he deserved it, right? But now Adam Edstrom is gone due to injury, and guys got to step up in these opportunities, and Othman has done that. He's been playing very well. And again, if you look at the impact score chart from last night, best player on the ice for the New York Rangers. Him, Panarin, Trocheck, Adam Fox all had great games. Brennan Othman had a great game, and I was kind of talking about how, when he finally scored his first point, I feel like that was a weight off of his shoulders. Now he can just get playing, right? I have to produce. That's kind of, you could see it in his game, right? And now I feel like he's kind of settling into the game at the NHL level, which I think is good. So he was the best player on the ice last night by the impact score chart, and he's been really good, as you can see from NYR Louis here. Brennan Othman has been really, really good, and this is from someone who is giving up on him. So that's pretty good praise there, and I've always believed in Brennan Othman. It's going to take him a second. Let's not give up on guys too soon. The Rangers organization is too well known for that. Shifting over to another guy, K'Andre Miller. Has been a problem this season. He hasn't, taken the steps that everyone thought was probably necessary this season, right? And again, John is pointing out that, he's stick checking again. He's not using his body. He's not playing physical. 5 years into his NHL career, still making the same mistakes as day one, and making an egregious mistake that you're taught not to do before you hit your teenage years. not playing the body. This guy's fundamentals are awful. And this is the thing I was talking about yesterday. You know, he has all the tools, but he doesn't have the hockey IQ. You can see it. And I wonder if that's a thing that you have to move off of him for this offseason. I really do believe that. I will say, though, I saw this stat yesterday, and I thought it was actually very interesting revolving around K'Andre Miller. And K'Andre Miller is 7th in the league in takeaways. And obviously that does have something to do with stick checking. But I think the reason a lot of Rangers fans are upset, and like John said in his tweet there, the reason, you know, he's upset is because he's stick checking. It's not so much the stick checking, because clearly that's working, at least in this regard. He's, again, he's 7th in the entire league in takeaways this year, which I think is very impressive. It's the fact that he's not playing the body at the same time. He's a big body. He doesn't use it to his advantage, and I think that's a problem, especially when, you know, you're in the playoffs and when you want to go deep in the playoffs and when you want to win a Stanley Cup. The games get harder, the games get more physical, and he doesn't use his body to his advantage. So I think that's why, you know, Rangers fans are upset about that. And if you take a look at his stats this season, you know, we saw it just the other day, 21 points, and he's never been a guy that was going to put up, you know, crazy points. He's not Adam Fox, right? Nothing like that. But there are some, you know, concerning numbers here, and it's very hard in the NHL, I think, to have more takeaways than giveaways. So like, I don't want to, you know, dump on him for that. I feel like most players have that. The 44 takeaways is actually very impressive, especially on this team. And you know, you can look at the plus minus. He plays a lot at his age too. That's another thing to consider, right? He's playing tough matchups and all that. So I do sometimes want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's been playing better the second half of the season. I don't think it's, you know, necessarily to an elite level or anything like that, but you know, we do have to consider he is 25. He was looking for a significant raise heading into next year. I don't know if you can give him that because he is who he is at this point. And maybe you can win with him on a second pairing, third pairing if you have the right pairing, but they're, you know, maybe the Rangers got to go out and make a significant trade this offseason. Maybe it's, you know, the development, which we know is not a strong suit of this organization. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens heading into next season. But before we get to next season, you know, we have a playoff race on our hands, and it seems like, according to these records, and I'll get to them in a second, nobody wants that final wild card spot. Absolutely no team wants that wild card spot, because every team in their last 10, it has been awful. And if you look at the Columbus Blue Jackets, they've really fallen off. You know, it was looking weird the last couple weeks that they were going to take that spot. Now they're 3-6-1 in their last 10. The Montreal Canadiens are 3-4-3. They're picking up points, though, in overtime. The Rangers are 3-6-1, not ideal, and we've been following that the whole time. Islanders 3-4-3, and Detroit has been abysmal, 3-7. So it seems like nobody wants that spot, and the Rangers have it right now. So come take it, I guess, whoever wants it, right? So the Rangers, like I said, I'm being realistic because, yes, they've played more games than pretty much everyone else in this race. It doesn't look like they're going to make it, but at the same time, like I said last week, I can see a world where they fall backwards by accident into the playoffs, even with the way they're playing. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And when you take a look at the current standings, Ottawa, 83 points. Looks like they're, you know, handily going to make the playoffs there in the first wild card spot. And then obviously the Rangers in that second spot there with 77. At the time I'm recording this, Montreal Canadiens are playing, so they could tie the Rangers. They have 2 games in hand right now. Obviously they're playing, so it's going to be 1 game in hand after today. And then you got Columbus. There's a couple games in hand with all these teams. So the Rangers have to make good use of the rest of their games, and they play some tough opponents like Minnesota coming up on Wednesday. So let me know what you think in the comments below about the current playoff race, about Othman's play. Brodzinski's been fantastic. JT Miller, unreal since coming over in a trade. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.